All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Zoe Mombert. I work with the City of Wilsonville, and I have the opportunity to work with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And this evening, I have the pleasure of introducing Anthony Veliz, and he is the founder of PODER, Oregon's Latino Leadership Network, a nonprofit organization. It is a collective movement of over 100 Latino-led and serving community-based organizations and private sector businesses, plus thousands of Latinos in Oregon. Anthony is also the owner of EZO Public Relations and Marketing, a multicultural agency specializing in Latino community, and it is people-focused and purpose-driven. He has a passion for public service and has been involved in his community at the local, state, and national level for over 30 years. He asked me to keep this. His resume is very impressive, but because he asked me to not go through it all, I will skip to just a few highlights. He is the first Latino ever elected to the Woodburn School District Board, and only the second Latino elected to serve on the City Council for the City of Woodburn. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anthony.
Thank you. I think that sounds more impressive than it really actually is when you actually live it, right? So again, thanks everybody for being here. I want to thank the City of Wilsonville for the invitation. Zoe, thank you for all of the work that you've did behind the scene. I want to thank all of the public elected official representatives here. As you mentioned, I am a public servant at heart. I think, a little bit about, my family. They're very spiritual people. And so I think I took their faith and in service, and I put it into public service. I just added the public in front of it. But so I think that, the apple hopefully didn't fall far from the tree. So today, again, I'm just talking about, it's really interesting. I'm so humbled, to be here and to just talk about, really, this is just a journey of my life. And I think, you'll see it's pretty robust after I'm done with it. But this is just my calling, my destiny. So again, Anthony Veliz, I'm the founder of PODER. And PODER, again, I started that in response to the pandemic. So I was fortunate enough to be locked up in my place and sitting in front of my computer. And I'm a lifelong resident. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But PODER was started in response to the pandemic. And I just couldn't sit there being a doer. And so I had to do something. So literally, I got on Zoom with one person. And it ended up being, it still exists today, so March of 2020 is when I started, and that one Zoom turned to statewide weekly meetings on Wednesdays from 12 to 1 for 2 years straight. And but again, it was what we did is we basically helped organize the Latino community at a statewide level via Zoom. Obviously, we were there to fight the pandemic, and I'll get more into PODER, but that's how it started. So hopefully I'll run this. So my journey begins in the field. So I am the son of farm workers. My grandparents on both sides were from Coahuila, Mexico, which is a border state up against Texas. And they arrived in Woodburn in the 40s as farm workers. And they were farm workers, my parents were farm workers, and I helped work in the field till I was 16 years old. So this kind of image right here was one, it's not exactly, because that's obviously not me, but what I think the image, what I want to tell is that when I was out in the fields, it was like picking strawberries. At that time, there was tons of strawberries here in the Willamette Valley, and especially in the Woodburn area. And, since we were we didn't have any childcare, right? If you were an infant or a toddler, you actually just hung out in the truck. Your older cousins would take care of you. And when you had an opportunity, when you finally were old enough, like literally 6 or 8, to do something a little bit more productive, we would basically join your parents out in the fields and work all day. And so this kind of image is kind of, it's a real image. But I used to stand in the strawberry fields of the Willamette Valley, looking at I-5 and looking at all those cars just pass by, zoom, zoom. And I would think to myself, those people must be rich because they're not sitting here with me and my family, in this hot 90-degree weather, picking strawberries for 10, 12 hours in the summer here in the Oregon. So that was kind of like my thing, okay, I got to do something. So one of the big influences of my life was, my dad, we're all farm workers, working in the fields, and one day somebody had an idea one of the farm workers and activists in Oregon. And they said, you know what? The only way out of the fields was to get an education. So in their great wisdom, they said, hey, let's start a college. And they actually did. And these are pictures of the U.S.'s first Chicano Latino 4-year accredited college in U.S. history. And of all places, it was in Mount Angel, Oregon, on the grounds of the monastery where the nuns are. So a little bit about the story is that there was a college called Mount Angel College, and it was run by the monastery, the nuns, and the priests. Well, it got to a point where they couldn't sustain it. It had $1 million debt. And I'm going to show you actually a video of this journey. It's a 7-minute video. I think it'll give you a really interesting overview. But my dad and a group of farm workers who you'll see in that video, they said, you know, let's start a college, and they did it, right? The funny thing about that journey, well, it was, you can imagine, farm workers, even today, they had no economic power, they had no political power, they didn't even have the education that they were advocating for. In fact, me and my dad were talking the other day. We were laughing. He's a retired teacher, by the way. He's 80, retired teacher. I'll tell you a little bit of a story about education in our family. But when they actually officially started Colegio Cesar Chavez on December 12, 1973, half of them couldn't even go to the college that they actually started because they didn't have a GED. Right? You have to have at least a GED or a high school diploma to go to a college, right? They didn't even have that. So they had to scramble and basically go get their GED, and the rest is history. So I'm standing here because of that, on the shoulders of giants and farm workers, actually, and people that dare to dream, right? And this just happened, just Mount Angel, Oregon, Oktoberfest, right? This weekend, it was just right there. So I want to play this video. And I'm supposed to put the mic on the speaker, turn it on. It's a 7-minute video, but it's really interesting. This is the first video that's been made about the colegio, but I think it's really interesting because a lot of people don't know about the colegio. And I've made it my life's mission to make sure that our story is told. And if we as Latinos don't tell it, then nobody tells it, right? So while you're doing this, let me just tell you about the colegio, because again, it's an interesting story. So my dad eventually graduated from the colegio, and he's, like I said, he's a retired teacher. So he's the only one in his generation of all my aunts and uncles that actually went to college. And we were talking the other day, and we were counting, because of that one decision to go to college, he ended up going to colegio. Then he went to what is OCE, which is Oregon College of Education, which is now known as Western Oregon University. But during that moment, during that time, he actually became a teacher, and that's what his career. He started when he was like 36. But since then, in our family, we've counted 43 superintendents, principals, teachers, administrators, coaches in our family because of that one decision now. So that's like amazing, right? But one decision. But unfortunately, I'm the evil capitalist. I have my own business, so I get teased a lot about that. But hey, that's life. But I'm still doing good with my business. A little bit more about me. So again, public service. I think that I've been a school board city councilor. I served 8 years on the State Board of Education. I was the chair the last 2 years. So I was really fortunate to be able to serve. So it's in my blood. It's in my heart. And I'll do it till my last breath. Whether it's elected official, but mainly it's really for the people. I think that's really what where my focus and my passion is.
I didn't know it was the last one. When I saw it, I noticed how the bright colors stuck out against the plain white walls. I was visiting a cluster of Catholic institutions in Mount Angel, a small town in rural Oregon. Everything I'd been taught about this place made me believe it had all been here forever. No one told me that this painting, titled College Without Walls, was actually the last surviving monument to a story that was literally painted over. That a revolutionary university occupied these same hallways for a decade. It was called Colegio Cesar Chavez, and it was the first independent 4-year Chicano university in the United States, and one of only a handful named after the great American civil rights leader while he was still alive. So what happened to this small, trailblazing college in rural Oregon? And how did it change the fabric of the Pacific Northwest? To understand how Colegio got started, we have to jump in at the end of another story. Rewind to 1973. Mount Angel College, a small school in rural Oregon with an impressive socially conscious curriculum, a core Chicano community, and a troubled bank account, was about to fold under financial pressure. The school had to make a choice. Some believed it should shut its doors for good, But leaders in the school's core Chicano community and the community itself had a different idea.
We had put in a lot of work in recruiting Chicano students. We basically wanted to continue to see how we could continue the education of Chicano students at Mount Angel College. I met with the president of Mount Angel College, Father Christian Mondor, and I asked him, now that we have a fairly large number of Chicano students here, what's the possibility of converting Mount Angel College into a Chicano institution of higher ed?
It wasn't an easy transition, and the problems facing the school didn't magically disappear. But on December 12, 1973,
we renamed the college Colegio Cesar Chavez, and it was a momentous day. We had a lot of people there, and there was a lot of inspiration and hope that for once, those students who were not recruited, not enrolled, not invited to attend colleges and universities throughout Oregon were now able to come and be part of a learning experience.
The community held a special ceremony to celebrate the birth of the groundbreaking institution, and President Ernesto Lopez spoke. Like the farm worker struggle, we are also struggling nonviolently to bring educational opportunity to students deserving a better life. We know the struggle ahead will be a great one, yet we are committed to survive. In the inaugural student handbook, Colegio further defined its mission: to provide educational opportunities for persons who have been denied access to higher education, and offer a bilingual and bicultural program through which Chicanos may maintain their culture and resurrect their history. And then the creators of Colegio did exactly what they set out to do. They started programs that successfully expanded educational access to women, workers, parents, adults, and many students who were excluded from mainstream education. These programs were all part of Colegio's College Without Walls philosophy. Colegio's approach emphasized practical and professional learning within the community and empowered students to define their own paths. In 1977, more Chicano and Chicana students graduated from Colegio Cesar Chavez than all of Oregon's state schools combined. Colegio Cesar Chavez attracted some of the best and brightest from all over the country, including Chavez himself, to join in its community. This incubator, which became a stronghold for the Chicano movement, facilitated a meeting of the minds that gave rise to some of the most powerful advocacy organizations in the Northwest. But for all its innovation and conviction, Colegio never fully escaped the ashes it rose from. The fledgling school immediately inherited $1 million in debt from Mount Angel College. The Department of Housing and Urban Development gave Mount Angel patience and flexibility as it worked to regain financial stability and pay off debts. Colegio did not receive these same luxuries.
As soon as we changed the name from Mount Angel College to Colegio Cesar Chavez, HEW right away stopped the money flow for our students, and that was our livelihood. Our kids needed the financial aid.
Colegio fought back, and the community gained wide support for their cause in and beyond Oregon. They filed lawsuits and staged rallies, vigils, marches, and occupations of their own campus to resist foreclosure and eviction by HUD, all while trying to establish a financial base and achieve accreditation for the institution. Colegio persisted for almost a decade, and even won its accreditation, and eventually triumphed over HUD and secured its campus. A final flicker of hope coursed through the community as they basked in their victories and looked to the future. But the damage inflicted was too deep. In 1983, Irma Gonzalez, Colegio's last president, presided over the final decision to close the school. "Someone definitely will have to write this opera," Gonzalez said. "The critics are right when they say it is the longest-running death in history." The campus sat abandoned for a few years before someone bought and returned it to its pre-Colegio owners, the Benedictine Sisters of Mount Angel, who went on to turn the campus into a shelter. All the brightly colored artworks that lined the hallways of the Colegio were covered up with a plain white paint, except for one. So maybe Colegio's first and last presidents were both right. The school did endure a long and treacherous battle worthy of its own opera, but when Ernesto Lopez spoke at the school's opening in 1973, his belief in the school's ability to survive was not misguided. Colegio Cesar Chavez did survive. For 10 years, Colegio gave students an opportunity to pursue higher education. Daniel De Siga, the painter who created College Without Walls, went on to become a prominent artist who captured the history of the Mexican-American farm worker. Sonny Montez, one of Colegio's founders and primary leaders in the fight against HUD, became and remained a central leader in Oregon's Chicano movement. And Cipriano Farrell, a 1977 graduate, first formulated his idea for a farm workers union in Colegio's hallways. Eventually, this evolved into Pineros y Campesinos Unidos de Noroeste, also known as PCUN. And since its founding in 1985, PCUN has succeeded in raising Oregon's minimum wage, ensuring Oregon's children have access to healthcare, fighting for the rights and safety of immigrants and farm workers, and becoming one of the biggest Latinx organizations in the Pacific Northwest. Colegio Cesar Chavez was not an end, but a beginning.
What we did in the 10 years of our existence, we planted seeds. We needed an icon, we needed role models, and we're still at it. And we've been doing it now for 50-some years.
Yeah, that's the Colegio Cesar Chavez, and I was a young boy at that time, and so I got to witness it. They used to, there was all these kids, right? I'm a product of that college, and they started a dance group, like a ballet folklorico, I think to keep us busy and out of everybody's hair. But it was really interesting because, when you're little, we used to work all day, and we would go to Mount Angel, we're all dirty, and a bunch of adults would be talking, and I don't know what they were talking about. You're so young. But I do remember that day when Cesar Chavez showed up because there was all these people and everybody was watching him. And there's a photo here. I love basketball. I'm a diehard Blazer fan. And so this is a shout out. Do you know who that is? Oh, that's Walton. Bill Walton, right? Bill Walton, who recently passed away, right? But Bill Walton was a supporter of the Colegio. And, he would actually host Cesar when Cesar would come to the Colegio Mount Angel at his home. I think he lived somewhere in northeast Portland, and he would host him there. He was kind of like a hippie, right? During a man ahead of his time, I like to say. And he would come down to Mount Angel and do what he could for the students, my dad, and all of the, for the fight, for the lucha, which is the struggle, right? So, but part of some of the people that came through the Colegio was, they mentioned in the video, Daniel De Siga, and he became a famous artist, in the Chicano Latino art world nationally. And then another person that was so when Cesar Chavez first started Dolores Huerta, I need to always mention Dolores Huerta because she was really the brains and the backbone of the United Farm Worker movement. She did all the contracts, and Cesar was the voice of it. But one of a college student named Luis Valdez was a theater major, and he loved acting and playwriting. So what he did is he made a play that kind of showcased the plight of farm workers. I think there was 4 actors, and he was a young man, but obviously he had a passion for it, and he helped tell the story when Cesar would go to all the colleges and universities. Anywhere he went, he would use the theater to tell the story of the plight of the farm workers. He ended up becoming a famous movie producer. Made movies like La Bamba and Zoot Suit. Maybe La Bamba is probably the most famous one, I think, in the mainstream, but if you're Latino, you probably know Zoot Suit. So it's really interesting, this time, this was really unique. So from there, my parents had, their best friend was Cipriano Fidel. And if you notice in the video, Cipriano was inspired by Cesar and Chavez, and he said, you know what? He was crazy enough and to say, you know what, we need a union here in Portland or in Oregon. So he is the original founder of PCUN. And that's the picture of PCUN. And obviously his focus was focusing on farm workers. And, it was not only a labor right movement, it was social justice, economic justice, but it was actually environmental justice, right? And so Cipriano, again, like I said, was best friends with my parents. So Cipriano would, my whole entire life until he tragically passed away when I was in graduate school in Rhode Island, he ended up mentoring, but I didn't know what mentoring was. So like when I was a younger boy, he would pick me up. I would go to, he'd knock on our door. We lived in downtown Woodburn, almost in a city right next to the railroad tracks. And it was Saturday morning, he'd pick me up and he'd take me to what is PCUN. And there was this huge machine, and we'd put black, basically ink in it. And we were making huelga signs. Huelga signs are basically picket signs. And we would do all, we'd have poster board, make those, let them dry, then I would nail them, a little stick to them. And so he would do that throughout my entire life. And what was the most annoying time was when I was in high school, because I played sports, football, basketball, track, and I thought it was a cool, when you're young, you're just like, oh, it's all about you, right? Especially if you're good in sports or just kind of like popular crowd. So, Friday night football, win or lose, we still played. And then the next day at 7 in the morning, boom, 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 we knock on. I hear a knock, and then my dad, hey, Cipriano's here. And I was like, what? I go, tell him I'm asleep, I'm tired, right? You know what I mean? I just wanted to sleep because playing, sports, right? And he goes, see, Cipriano, he ain't going to leave. So he had this little black truck, 2 doors, a 3-speed. And there I go, and he would just take me somewhere. He took me to like conferences, about social justice, racial. He would take me to like different pickets, boycotts, like in front of grocery stores. I go, this is so embarrassing. I thought it was all cool. And I'm like, picking in front of Safeway, right? And as a high school kid, right? So, but anyway, so it was just kind of made me who I was. So there's 2 things that I witnessed: the colegio before it existed and then existed, and Pecún. And those are kind of what made me who I am today. So one of the things that was happening as growing up in the Willamette Valley is, as I mentioned, we would pick strawberries, right? And I remember the days when we would literally, if you can imagine, we're all working, right? Picking strawberries. And then over here to our, I guess it would be to your left, there's a crop duster, crop dusting the strawberries. And we would literally say, we would see it coming, right? And we would literally just, whatever you had, just cover yourself. And of course it was going to come on us, and it would fall on the strawberry, leaves like rain, right? And you know what we do? Just dust ourselves off and keep working, right? We didn't know any better, about that was on us. We walked in, or how, all these kind of things, right? And unfortunately, a lot of people got sick, right? Cancer being one of them. So the farm worker community once again, said, there's this need. We need health care, right? Because none of us had health care. That was like, we didn't even know what it was, to be honest. So an organization called the Valley Migrant League organized the farm workers, including my parents and Cipriano, a lot of other Latino leaders from Woodburn, especially area, and they started what is known as Salud Medical Center. Salud Medical Center is the first farm worker clinic in Oregon history, and my mom happened to be the first employee, the very first one, beyond the director. The director hired her. And so guess where I was at growing up? I was at Salud. I remember moving these big old, back in the days, everything's heavy, made out of metal, like all the file cabinets and the chairs were kind of broken. And basically what they did to make this go, they basically, they hired the Latino community, like my mom. She was the assistant to the executive director. And then the nurses and doctors who were non-Latinos, they would volunteer their time. And it actually started at Pecún, that other picture, that was where it was originally housed. And kind of coincidentally, that building was a church. So if you can thread that, how this movement has always been a spiritual one, I believe. And it took a lot of faith to do what they did. But it was really a beautiful time, my mom. And we would go on Saturdays, this big old white beat up van. And we'd jump in the van and we'd go to all these fields all over the region. One area we always went to was Washington County, like the Cornelius-Hillsborough area. And one year, during this era, a little girl named Virginia Garcia tragically passed away from a curable illness. And that's how that movement started. Now we have Virginia Garcia, if you've ever heard of it. It's the second farm worker clinic. So it was really interesting to see it before and then how. But the Salud, was kind of like the template and the model. And this is what's really unique about Salud. It still exists today. It's like 50 years. But I guess the framework that they use is they try to have all the services there. So I'm not trying to send the community in different places like this. You're going to have to give for eye and mental health, and you're obviously doctor. It's all one, your pharmacy, and they try to just make it as convenient. Because people, time, is money kind of thing, and being, lower socioeconomic, those are hardships on people like that. So 3 things happened that I just talked about. First of all, Latinos especially farmers, had no business starting a college, right? You can imagine, could we start a college here today? I don't know, right? Cipriano, because I know Cipriano say this, rest in peace, but he had no business starting Pacun because he didn't know how to even start that, like organize this whole movement, which still exists today. And Salud Medical Center. If there was one thing we had no business doing, it was healthcare. The reason why? We had no doctors, we had no nurses, that didn't exist at all in Oregon. There was nobody, and they started it, right? So unfortunately, I got to witness that, and it made me who I am. So I'm a dreamer, right? So again, I talked about the pandemic, and this is what all I'll take credit for is being the spark of this movement. And so basically, during the pandemic, March 20th, I remember that day, March 20, 2020. I was sitting in front of my computer, and I was fortunate enough to be able to stay home, right? Because a lot of Latinos didn't. And I knew that this was going to impact the Latino community hugely, and it did. At its height, the pandemic, we were, at that time, Latinos were like statewide, we're about 12% of the population. But at its peak, we were 40% of all deaths and 40% of all cases. And why? Well, a lot of disparities, right? But we had to keep our community had to keep working in the fields, all over. And so I was like, I couldn't do, being a doer, I can't sit around and do nothing, right? So what I did is literally on Zoom, I'd Zoom with you, and then you'd invite 2 people, and it just boom, just grew. Pretty soon we had like 100 people on Zoom, and we were organizing ourselves. This is just from Zoom. So we had healthcare committee, of course, because we were in a pandemic, and we had business and K-12, higher ed, employment. Remember the check thing, All these kind of things were going on. So we organized, went into committees, and we were helping our community to help fight the pandemic. So again, like I said, we started meeting with the governors, state agency heads, anybody that would listen, they would come, show up on our statewide town hall from 12 to 1, and they would come and talk about what they're doing, but we would actually try to hold them accountable and then work with them afterwards. At our peak, we earned a $5 million health equity grant, and this is what we did with it. I'll show you. That was the largest grant like any Latino organization had ever received in Oregon's history, by the way. And it was crazy because we were just a movement. We weren't even a nonprofit. We're just a movement, and not just. So some of the work that we did is we would basically like the day laborers. There's a place in Portland, and we would go and provide services, mental health services. A lot of us were locked out, right? If you didn't have technology, you were basically locked out of about society, right? And a lot of our community, there's disparities, didn't have cell phones, technology, internet. So we would provide these services, and we bought cell phones. Again, we did therapy, We started the first statewide, how would I say it? This first statewide bilingual, bicultural, travel and behavior and mental health group with some of those resources. So literally, Melinda Avila, who owns Oyen Emotional Wellness Center, it's actually a clinic, all bilingual, bicultural staff, but she's a PSU grad, and she called all her friends and therapists, and they came together, and they started traveling all over the state. And what they would do is obviously provide therapy the first session anywhere they could. Didn't matter if it was a barn, could be a classroom, could have been at the expo center after the wildfires in out Medford area, Talon and Phoenix. But they basically would meet, the first therapy, and then they quickly figured out, well, one session's not enough. So we bought thousands of Chromebooks and thousands of hotspots. And literally, if this was like a box here, like of a Chromebook, the little ones, the ones that you have at school, we literally would take the Chromebook, because some of these people had never even ever touched a computer. And we'd open it up out of the box, and then we'd literally put it here, they'd be sitting there, and we gave them a little notepad and a piece of paper, and we'd open the box, and then we'd say, charge it, right? You have to charge it first. And then once it's charged, they'd sit around for a while, and then we'd show them, this is the on button, right? Literally, this is the on button. And so then after that, what the most empowering piece of information or thing that they could have that we gave them was Gmail accounts. Because do you remember at that time, you couldn't pay a bill, you couldn't set a doctor's appointment, you couldn't do anything, right? that was a Latino community, right? Especially undocumented farm workers, people, poor people, right? And so the reason we went through all this work, because what we did is Melinda and the therapist committed to providing them 12 follow-up sessions. But we were from like more north of Portland Metro, and we're trying to serve people in Klamath, Talent, Phoenix, all over the state. I can name every city almost on the coast, central, off of 84, Hood River, and Stanfield, Oregon. And basically we had to teach them how to use Zoom, right? And then we'd practice with them and everything. And that's how we continued that service, free of charge, by the way, right? So it was just a beautiful thing to see. And the stories, were just amazing. So that was some of the things that we did. We bought 1 million masks. So I'm walking down Woodburn, and I see like our Latino farmer community agriculture workers. There was a man with a blue mask. It was beat up. Like it was just basically, I think he had like fixed it and tied, And then I see some other people walking down the street downtown. They have like a bandana, around. That was their mask. And I go, this is ridiculous, right? I mean, but if you think about it, when you are of humble means, to walk into Walgreens and buy, a bunch of masks was sometimes economic. It didn't make sense, right? And that's probably why a lot of people were getting sick and having complications and passing away. So we bought 1 million masks. I can't even tell you how hard it was to buy 1 million masks during the pandemic. Countries were buying 1 billion masks, right? And we finally found some, and we bought them. And we worked with 2 nonprofit organizations, Oregon Human Development Corporation, they're in like 12 counties, and then Oregon Child Development Corporation, they're across state. And we basically got them, took them off the truck, they put them in their network, and they distributed these 1 million masks to the most vulnerable people in our society, which are undocumented farm workers, people from Mexico, Guatemala, and they were really happy to have them. So that was another thing that we did with this movement. I have a marketing agency, and so this is a little bit about me, I get it. But basically, I'm really, really proud of this because I think we conducted the first multilingual prevention, education, information campaign in U.S. history. The reason why I can say that, because we not only did it in Spanish, because Latinos speak Spanish, but we have a lot of indigenous people that work Purepecha, Zapateco, these are languages, Mom and Mixteco, and we did a campaign in those languages to help fight COVID-19. So you remember, wear the mask, wash your hands, 6 feet, and all that. And it was really interesting because a few of the indigenous communities, they're illiterate in their own language, and a lot of their language is oral. So we had to literally go find deep in our community people that would speak Mam, that's more from Guatemala. And then, so you find somebody, right? But then they're like really, this is like our story. They were really shy and humble. Nobody wanted to stand in front of a camera and do like a PSA, right? What's a PSA, right? But that was the only way that we could, that's the only way that we could get the word out. And we basically created these videos in multiple languages, many, many videos, and it took forever. How many takes, because if you're not a professional, it's hard to just say what needs to be said, right? And then, but it was really cute because once they got comfortable and confident, man, they just changed. And then they were really fired up because of the difference they were making in their communities. So I was really proud of that. We did print, radio, social media, and we worked with our 100+ community-based organizations to get the word out. And this is statewide. So it was a really complex, but really rewarding experience for me. So, any questions, actually? Anybody, any comments? And by the way, I forgot to say, if you guys want to jump in, say something, I'm totally fine with that. For sure, afterwards, we'll definitely have some time for Q&A. So, do you remember in the video, that mural right there? It's not there anymore. So, about 3 or 4 years ago, I finally go, you know what? I haven't been to Colegio, which is in Mount Angel, Oregon. Do you guys know where Mount Angel is, right? There's the Abbey. Everybody knows the Abbey mainly. Well, down the monastery, right? And I go, I'm going to go in there and check this out. I go, I haven't been there for so long, and I went in there, and it was like a locked door, right? And I was like, and basically it's a shelter, right? So it made sense. The door was locked, right? Coincidentally, fate, right? Somebody I'm standing at the door, somebody pushes the door, and I'm like, he was the executive director of that shelter. And then I go, I told her my story, I want to see the murals. And she's like, what murals, And I go, well, that one was the one that like, that's like somebody's logo brand. That's like a Nike brand to Latinos, right? This is like iconic thing. And I walked in. If you walked into that door, see, like this is like the main entrance. There was glass. So like there's a door, and it's right there. It would be like on that wall as I walk in, and it was gone. It was a white. It was just a white. And you know, if you think about if you're an artist, you know, all the beautiful murals. I don't know if you have murals around here. That's like the worst thing you can ever do is paint over somebody's art, right? I mean, that's why, you know, people, yeah. And so, could go, but I just looked at that and I was like, wow. I go, they're erasing me. So, sorry, sometimes it just hits you, right? So, you know, it just hit me really hard. And I go, you know what? Me being a doer, I'm going to do something about this. And now, this journey that I'm on now is to make sure that nobody forgets the colegio. And, you know, so that's what I've been doing the last like 4 to 6 years, is really telling this story. So thank you for having me here, because this is an Oregon story. And probably, I bet most of you had never heard of the colegio, right? But it's a real thing, existed, and the people are still, you know, they're in their 80s like my dad, and some have passed, but there's a lot. So I've been in my journey, I call them the OGs. I've been working with the OGs. I've got them out of their rocking chairs, and I put them back to work. Like, and so, remember, this is some images of colegio. It existed. And like they said, in its 10-year span, more Latino students graduated from just this little college in Mount Angel than Oregon State, Portland State, PCC, every college and university. They had more graduates. That's crazy if you think about it, right? Because it was small. So yeah, these are some of the images. This is like, again, I was really blessed to be there when Cesar's show came. I didn't really understand too much about what was going on, but it existed for 10 years, and I got older, so I started to understand. So again, my mission is to tell this story. So I did. So PODER, you know, through that fateful day, you know, several years ago, I thought, you know what? December 12th, 2023 is like 50 years. And I was like, this day could have just came and went, right? Could have came and went. But no, the way I am, having experienced the colegio, Pecun, and Salud, I got to do something about it. I'm going to tell the world this story. And I did. On this day, we went actually back to the site of the colegio, and people from all over the country came, and we celebrated the, you know, like I said, we celebrated the 50th anniversary. We did it in the summer because, you know, we would have done it December 12th, which we did. It would have been rainy and stuff, and there was a lot of people came from all over. And these are some of the images of that day. It's a really cool one experience, and I'll show you a picture here. That's Sonny Montes, and hopefully someday you'll meet him, and Jose Romero. They're still with us, of course. And so just a little fun fact. So there's never been a Latino or Latina college or a college president of a 4-year accredited institution in Oregon history, ever, still to this day. Then we were thinking about, you know what? Colegio had the first and only ones. So that's crazy if you think about it, right? I mean, since December 12, 1983, there's never been, ever. Community colleges, yeah, we've had a few, but never a 4-year since then. And actually, that's Maria Lenise who taught me ballet. You know, remember the dance I was, and these are my parents. And they're still, and these women were students, and they're like from New Mexico and DC now. And I think this right here, I wanted to put this image in you because Natalia Fernandez works at Oregon State University. And Sonny and Jose and a bunch of people that had lived in that era, they donated all of the memorabilia, so to speak, to Oregon State University. So if you go to Oregon State University, in their library, there's a display there. It's pretty cool. But Natalia is what would you call it? What do they call the people that like archive? I can't even think of the title, but historian. There you go. Yep. I'll use that. And she created the story of Colegio on these, and so these are being taken all over the place. So it's kind of like my vision is coming true, right? People are starting to know, but now you, right? So maybe, I don't know where that's going to lead, but hopefully, you can spread the word. Yeah.
Question.
Yes, yeah, sure.
The art, the mural that was destroyed or
Yeah.
taken away, are you going to replace it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good, there's images of it, and that's my dream, is to basically recreate it, have Latino artists.
I'm an artist. So
There you go. Then you're hired for free. For free though. No, we have no money. No, I'm kidding.
My husband
Just
was
kidding.
a union leader and
Oh, really?
had the opportunity
That's amazing.
to Chavez, the
That's-
lettuce debacle.
That's beautiful. That's what a opportunity. So yes, I mean that's my dream is to be somebody to recreate it. But what I'm thinking of is where would we put it, right? So this is the story. So again, 5 decades later, I'm telling this story. I'm here today, and remember OPB? They were inspired by the work that I led, because I wouldn't say I don't do all. I mean, nobody, one person can do it, but I'm crazy enough to get the spark going, and so now OPB has been following me around for several months now, and it's about the legacy now, and I'm being honored that I'm the symbol of the legacy, right? And so it's going to come out next month, so hopefully you guys will see it. Yeah, this is just a little bit of the work, and that's myself, Sonny Montes, Jose Romero in front of the Colegio in Mount Angel, probably a month ago. So I'm really, really, really excited. It just brings me great joy. And my hope, for Sonny and Jose, because I got them out of the rocking chair. They always tell me that. You guys, and I got them on tour now. They're like rock stars, And actually, I should have invited them here. You would have loved to meet them. They would have came too, because they just love it, right? They just have so much history. But my hope is that now the vision is to, I call it Colegio Cesar Chavez 2.0. What does that mean? To restart, jumpstart the colegio. And when we start that college again, it will be the only Latino 4-year accredited college in the U.S., period. There's none exist. And it's my mission, that was my destiny to help do this. And I'm not sure what forms it's going to take, but we'll see what happens, right? To be determined. So, any questions or thoughts right now? A few more things, believe it or not. I'm not done. So PODER, is this collective movement, and we're doing a lot of things. It's a lot of fun. It's turned into a lot of different opportunities. The Portland Trailblazers last year, they honored us for their night, their Hispanic Latinx Heritage Night, and so they honored us and the work that we've been doing. They told the story, so when we went to the game, they were up on the billboards and this and that. They helped us do fundraising, so that was really cool. Because I remember I'm a diehard basketball fan, so that was really nice to have even just the logo, in such a big, prominent platform, and that was it was beautiful. It was beautiful. This, I'm crazy enough to do things. So 15 years ago, I was thinking, there's nothing that really actually to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. So me being the doer that I am, I started the Hispanic Heritage Month Breakfast and Summit 15 years ago. And last Friday, we celebrated our 15th anniversary. And basically, it's a time for Latinos and non-Latinos to come together, and it's Oregon's official kickoff to Hispanic Heritage Month. And, we have, it's like when you get there, there's live music. We're just, very welcoming, and it's fun. And we have a breakfast. We have speakers. One of my speakers is this guy. That's my friend. Who is he? He's Richard Montanez. He's the inventor of hot Cheetos. And they made a movie about him called Flamin' Hot that was directed by Eva Longoria. It's a true story. And him and I connected a long time. Now he barely wants to talk to me because he's famous Hollywood type now, right? No, it's not true. He came and he helped celebrate, He was on my podcast. But this is a few images of the breakfast. But he's just amazing, man. He has you got to see the movie and the story. He's 4th or 6th grade education. So he's the godfather, is what we say, of Hispanic marketing. And I have a Latino Hispanic marketing agency. So we just connected decades ago because, I don't know, we just, how life just brings you to people that you have like-minded, and you just, kind of like you are who your friends are kind of thing. And so, yeah, so he came and he helped me and he helped celebrate that 1 year. But these are like pictures of the people. And it was really interesting because we were reflecting on 15 years later. Even in that time, like last year, I think it was, for good or for worse, but we had the superintendent of Portland, Lake Oswego, Beaverton, Woodburn, Salem Kaiser, we're all Latinas. That's incredible, right? Especially when, remember the colegio? Zero. Nobody was anything like that 50 years ago. So I guess we've come a long way, right? Here's another crazy thing I'm working on. So I grew up, that's my brother right there, Joaquin. We grew up literally on the other side of the tracks, next to the tracks. My backyard for my entire first 30 plus years of my life was this park. And I got to tell you a story about that. So, when I was telling you we were farm workers, and we'd be out there working, get up at 4, in the fields at 5, you couldn't even see what was going on. But the Ramirez's, the Garcias, the Veliz's, the Mayas, all of us would get, work all day, right? So then we'd finally get out maybe 6, and it was a park with an outdoor pool, and it had a chain link fence around it. And I would, as soon as I get home, all dirty, I was like 6 or 7, and then you could hear the kids playing, right? You couldn't see them because they're in the pool, right? So I'd go home and change real quick, and then I'd go run over there, and I'd just boom, hit the fence, and I'd be looking for my friends, and then they'd be swimming this way, and I'd be going this way. That's cool, and going this way. So the crazy thing is that my parents, we didn't even have the quarter for me to go into that pool. Think about that. Couldn't even have the quarter to go in that pool. So there was a baby pool that was free, but I was too cool for that. There's no way I'm going in that pool. But today, that's an aquatic center. And I'm a member, and I actually went swimming today. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, those things that you have. But with all that said, again, my mom took me to that park when I was 3 days old. I'm 57 right now. So I've been going there literally almost my whole life, right? Literally. So I go, you know what? Woodburn has earned something, beautiful, right? So, what can I do to leave our community that I love and care about, right? And the people, right? And this is it right here. So about pre-COVID, I think it was pre-COVID. No, right after COVID, it was around there. Actually, it might have even been during COVID. But I went to the city. I'd have been a city councilor, right? I went to the city hall, and I went there, and I go, hey, I want to start this community center. They had tried for 20, decades before. And I went, and they said, well, wait a minute, let me check. So next thing I know, they said, well, I wanted to have it in the council chambers. They go, well, why don't you have it somewhere? And I was like, whoa, they didn't want to do it, right? So I go, well, give me the old renderings of the other, the one that didn't pass. I took those. If you've ever been to downtown Woodburn, there's a really famous restaurant called Luis's Taqueria. Right in that same restaurant, they have this other space, overflow. And I was there for six people showed up. I invited whoever would come. And then it turned to 12, 18, 20, 40 people, right? So then one day, because we had a state representative, her name was Teresa Alonso Leon, and she had small business Saturdays. And she would invite all the legislators, her colleagues, to come to learn about Woodburn and shop, right? And, support the Latino businesses. So we're having lunch. I'm sitting there. There's a chair right here. And I'm not trying to get political. I'm just telling you the story. Speaker Kotek sits right next to me. I was like, oh, nice to meet you, all that kind of stuff. And then she goes, Anthony, what is one thing that you need? Woodburn. And, you know what I mean? The first day, I already, when she asked that, my mind went to, we need a community center. We're the largest city in Oregon without a community center. Our community has earned that to have it right. Something nice, right? So she goes, okay, this is Saturday. She calls me on Monday, Anthony, I need you to write me a letter. And I'm simplifying this, not and ask me for money. So she goes, and I was like, okay, I'll do it. One pager, blah, blah, blah. We didn't have Chat GPT, so I literally had to write it, right? And so I wrote it, and I asked her for $5 million. I don't know. I'm crazy, right? That's ridiculous amount of money. So then she calls me on Friday. She goes, Anthony, I got some good news, and I got some bad news. And I go, okay, well, just tell me the bad news. She goes, Well, I didn't get you the $5 million. I go, oh, well, that's okay, Speaker Kotek. I understand. It's just a shot in the dark, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? You have a great weekend. She goes, wait. She goes, aren't you going to ask me the good news? And I said, okay, what's the good news? She goes, I got you $1 million. And I was like, what? And then that news went like fire to the city hall. And then all of a sudden I became everybody's best friend. How did that happen, right? So that was the first kind of thing, right? So then here's the second story related to this, because this is really kind of crazy story. So then, have you guys heard of Senator Peter Courtney? Right? Iconic, right? Well, he was my senator, my and a lot of other people's entire lives. So, and so I don't know if you ever met him, but he's kind of like a grumpy kind of guy. He has like this New England accent. So basically, I did the same thing. I put together, if you ever go meet with legislators, you only got 15 minutes. You just got to go in there, in and out. That's it. So me, the mayor, and Representative Alonso Leon, we went in to meet the mayor, and so I'm waiting outside. I have my phone like this, and I'm sitting there, because internet's working good. And I'm just like, and I'm looking, I just wanted to just read a little bit about him more, even though I knew him, but, just the details. And then I'm like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. So then we walk in there. Again, you only get 15 minutes. You do the introductions. And he's sitting, I'm sitting at a table like this, and I go, it's always good to meet a fellow alumni, Senator Courtney. He's like, what do you mean? I go, I went to the University of Rhode Island. He goes, what? He goes, no, you didn't. He goes, yeah, I did. He goes, what were their colors? Baby blue and white. He goes, well, when I went there, they had that gold, and it looked like UCLA. Of all the colleges and universities that I could have went to, I went to the University of Rhode Island. Guess where, Senator? He went to URI, his undergrad and his graduate school. So we have this 15-minute presentation. I asked him for like a crazy $25 million. And when I said that, that's exactly what he did. He's like, but then he's grumpy, and he started yelling. He goes, you're crazy. Money doesn't grow on trees. I mean, all this stuff, he just laid it on me. He didn't say anything to the mayor or to the rest of it. He was just looking at me. And then he just goes, okay, well, I got to go. 15 minutes. He's like, and then I'm walking out, and he puts his hand on his shoulder. Anthony, he goes, he didn't go to URI. I go, yeah, he did. He goes, where'd you live? Where did you live? I go, down the line. And the only way you know that is if you lived, and basically Narragansett Bay, is in Rhode Island. That's called down the line, and that's where all the students lived, graduate students. And so he goes, you went to URI. So that was on a Monday. Fast forward Friday, guess who calls me? Senator Courtney. He's like, Courtney. He goes, Anthony, this is Courtney. That's just like that. He just says it, right? He goes, and he went off for another 10 minutes. He goes, you're crazy, $25 million. Do you hear all this stuff? Do you read the paper? Blah, blah, blah. Everybody's always asking for money. He just, with his Rhode Island or Massachusetts accent, And I go, okay, thank you, Senator Courtney. I appreciate your time. Just the same thing, He goes, well, I've got some good news. I got some bad news. And then he said the same thing, literally. I go, what's the bad news? He goes, well, then I shouldn't have asked him that, because he went off on another 5 minutes about $25 million. It's crazy, right? And then I go, okay, well, thank you for, have a great week. Same thing. He goes, well, aren't you going to ask me about the good news? Anthony, you're wasting my, I called you. And I go, well, what's the good news? I got you $15 million. Boom, he hung up. Well, I don't know if it was a cell phone, but he hung up on me. And I'm like, did I just hear just like, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh my, and he was. So $15 million. So $16 million can buy you a good chunk of a $60 million project. So this November, it's going to the voters, and if this happens, it's gonna be beautiful. So thank you. So in closing, what is this, right? This is a story. I'm a storyteller, but it's really, I hope it's interesting to you. Ileana, right there's my daughter, raise her hand. She has all the credit and the blame for this. So Ileana plays on pretty much all production. She's, how many years ago was that, Ileana? 5 years ago, senior year. Probably all Latina, except for maybe one now. We're playing at, and I'm calling them out, Sweet Home High School. I was in Portland, and Sweet Home is a heck of a long way, especially at 5 o'clock. I was like, every reason, I was like, I'm not going to go, man. There's another, all these excuses, right? I'm not going to go. But I made it. I don't even know how long it took me, like 2.5 hours. It was ridiculous, the traffic and everything, and then all the way out to Sweet Home. So I finally get there. I'm just like, I'm tired, right? Get my whatever concessions. I sit there. And then all of a sudden, they're warming up, and then all of a sudden I hear this, USA, USA. And I'm like, am I getting punked? Because this is not an international, right, match. It's Woodburn High School versus Sweet Home. And basically there was 6 boys who were non-Latinos holding a white national flag and a political flag going across saying that. And I'm sitting in the middle. I'm like, is this really happening? They're out there warming up. I was like, wow, this is crazy, right? And then all of a sudden I see them go over there. I see a gentleman who later I found out was the athletic director. He was like yelling at him. And then they said, free speech. I heard that word. And eventually he forced them to go off there. And I guess they, right off the stadium, they parked their cars, you could hear, and they hung those flags while Ileana and her team played, right? And I think one time, if you remember this, like the ball went like out of bounds and she grabbed it. And I remember she went like that. And they were basically just yelling like racial slurs. And even when you went to the bathroom, right? They were saying racial, but I witnessed that, right? At that time, of all things that I was doing, I was on the State Board of Education. Of all positions that I have, I was the chair of the State Board of Education. So guess what? I was going to do something about it, and I did. And I pulled together like COSA, the administrators, the teachers, all of these education people, OSAA, and we started this. And basically this is the anti-harassment and racism program that exists. So if you go to any OSAA sporting event, especially varsity, you'll hear them read something. It's very different versions of it. One thing I think that I'm most proud of is that, just that, to create awareness. But now, now there's actually policies and rules that if there's school districts, individuals, it can be people from the community or internal athletes, whatever. I don't want this to happen, but now there is that you can get banned for life. A school can get banned for life now. And because we don't want to go there, right? I mean, that's not the point.
Started reading that this last year at the games.
Excuse me?
They just started reading that this last year.
Oh.
Because I've been going to the basketball games
There you go.
for 10 years, and this last year was the first time they started reading something. So is
Yeah.
that because of 5 years ago?
Yeah. But sometimes good things take time, right? So that is something that I think a little bit of a legacy that I left. But it was an unfortunate incident that happened to Ileana, but sometimes the man upstairs puts you somewhere for a reason, right? And again, I think my life is kind of like if you kind of follow all this stuff that I do is kind of that. And so I quit trying to control my destiny. I just let it. It's going to happen, right? The way it's supposed to happen. So with that, I'm going to try to play one more video. Hopefully I'm a little bit better here.
We don't play sports to see who's the fastest or the strongest, who can jump the highest or throw the farthest. We play sports because we know that the world is not always fair, that it judges us by what we look like, where we come from, what we believe, who we love, and because it will take generations to change that. But for a few hours at a time, sport allows us a refuge where we all play by the same rules. Where what matters is not our appearance, our ancestry, our beliefs, or our gender. Where what matters is what we do, how we act and react, how we compete and cooperate, how we behave in victory and in defeat. Sport offers us a chance to be who we always wanted to be, to reveal the best within us. Sport allows us the opportunity to show our humanity, the way it could be, the way it should be. And if we can't find it within ourselves to be fair, to be decent, to be human to each other, when the stakes are no higher than numbers on a scoreboard, what chance do we have for the rest of our time together?
That's my little piece of my little legacy piece for the state, right? For the students in the future, right? So that's the end of the presentation, and there's more chapters to write, I think, in my life, right? And to be continued. But I just want to again thank the city and the DEI series and Zoe for like helping me and all of you coming together this evening. I know your time is valuable and precious, but thank you so much for having me. And if you guys have any questions or comments, I'd be more than happy to answer and listen. So thank you very much. Any questions? Yes.
How does one get involved with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we have the PODER is a nonprofit now. And, so I think, yeah, we can get a hold of me. I've got cards, my business card, and definitely we can get you involved because right now, it's really just a work of passion, right? We're volunteers, and we've always been volunteers. Everything I showed you were people that were volunteers. There was very few people that ever got paid to do what they were doing until they actually started an organization. So, yeah. Yes?
How do kids, students, learn about this history? I mean, is there a book for kids? Is there curriculum?
Yeah. 99.99% of Oregonians or people do not know the story, and you guys are part of the elite few now. No, it really comes down to that. If Latinos want to be recognized in the history books, we're kind of forced to not forced, but we have to tell our own story from our narrative, right? And so that's what's happening now. During that, there was a lot of teachers during that celebration that came, and so what's happening now is the founders are going around and they're having presentations with teachers, and they're starting to create curriculum. It's kind of spotty right now, but it would be kind of cool if the Oregon Department of Education some days adopts the Colegio Cesar Chavez curriculum, because it's a very beautiful and inspiring story, and it was way ahead of its time. Yeah. Yes?
We talked about that developing the Colegio as just virtual rather than a brick and mortar to be more affordable.
That is crazy that you mentioned that, because yes, and I don't know if you saw, it was called the College Without Walls. Modern day, what is that? Virtual. But I don't know. There was some icons during the video about the curriculum, the kind of big stuff. It's crazy because this is in 1970s, 70s, and the Colegio created this unique curriculum. Now the University of Phoenix, you have all these colleges and universities, they actually are doing, they took that and now they packaged it, right? And it's part of, because you can get now experiential learning. That never existed. Colegio started that. Of all, you'd think it would have been like Harvard or somewhere, or anywhere, even somewhere here, but nope. Colegio started a lot of these concepts of education, right? Especially with farm workers, we had to have a way to take their life experiences and make it have value, right? When the society never valued it. Still doesn't at some level. Yes.
Well, thank you for your presentation. I think the way you presented today, I think really exemplifies what the community that formed this committee wanted, which is to find ways to learn things that we didn't know.
Yeah.
And you just told us that we're some of the few people who heard this, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Anything else? Yes.
It's a season for candidates for office, local and state and beyond. And I understand that the Latino community votes at good numbers, but that candidates and campaigns don't reach out.
Yeah.
So do you have suggestions and ideas?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, we do have, in history, we have the most Latino public elected officials in Oregon history right now. We have people running for mayors, and we do have mayors, city council, all of state legislators, state senators, all of that. We have now 2 congresswomen, actually, the first ever in Oregon. And so, yeah, I think really it's just, obviously your community, it's geographic. I think you just have to show up. In a language, a smile and a handshake goes a long way. That's pretty international. And sometimes, just the simplest things can make the biggest difference, right? But I think the hard thing is to show up. But not just show up, during the voting season, but you got to keep showing up. Because that's the only way you're going to build, like we all do, relationships, trust, and people will be able, feel more comfortable both ways, right? So I think I would just do that. But you got to communication. I'm a marketing guy, so you definitely got to communicate with the people. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. Yes.
There's a lot of stratification within the Latino community. That they're very successful people 50 years ago was rare in this part of the world.
Yeah.
It seems to me the biggest outreach has to be to the immigrant and the uneducated labor or portion of the population. They're the ones who need those help. What do you identify as the principal priorities to reach those groups?
Well, I believe it or not, with PODER, this might sound counterintuitive, but I think we need a vertical strategy. So here's why. So if you look at a pyramid, right, we definitely have all of the like farm worker, tourism, construction jobs, right? But as you climb up your ascend in your field, right, whether you're a physician, whether you're an attorney, I mean, just superintendent, right, things like that. You literally are the only one. In Oregon, you can still be the first Latino or Latina in a lot of different places and spaces. So I think when we think about that, there's a lot of burnout at the top, right? And so one of the things that PODER is doing, just to kind of address that we're starting associations in different industries. Let me give an example. We started the Latino, we're basically like the back room to help launch, give birth, so to speak, to associations. So what do you mean? So there's an organization called the Oregon Association of Latino Administrators. And who are they? They are the superintendents, principal, and administrators of K-12. Well, they've organized themselves, and again, all that work for like over 15 years paid off. As remember I mentioned, we had the superintendents of school districts from some of the largest school districts in Oregon. That doesn't happen individually, right? Because the way I can say that is that we've never had a college president. Because why? He or she doesn't have like a political, like it's political, right? You need to have some political power. So we started the Latino Providers Association, which basically are all the Latino surgeons, doctors, doulas, therapists from OHS, heart surgeons, brain surgeons, frontline. So we started, we're creating an association of Latino healthcare professionals. And so they've been organizing a lot. We've been helping to organize the last 2 years. And we had a meeting at OHSU like earlier this year, and I walked into like their auditorium. There was like 86 doctors. I was like, wow, I've never seen that in my life, right? Like Latinos, right? That's like, even to this day, I was like, wow, that's crazy. Never to see it. And it was beautiful though. But you only do that because you have to organize, right? And so we're starting that in business, healthcare, like I mentioned. We're starting the higher education, an association, because we have a lot of people working in community colleges, public, private, four-year, but we've never ascended to the presidency, right? And I know we have maybe some deans, a couple. If you can name them, that's not enough, right? Jose Cole, Elias Villegas, Manuel, I can name them, right? You can't do that with other communities, right? Just too many. So yeah, I think that's organizing. Anything else? Yes.
I'm curious whether housing is an issue for farm workers and seasonal laborers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have farm worker housing, FHCC, Farm Worker Housing Development Corporation, but it's still not enough. It's just a societal problem, but it's even worse, I think, with farm workers, because especially when you get people that come seasonally, right, and they don't have a voice, right? They're like invisible, and so we have to keep, advocating for that. But yeah, we need affordable housing. I think all people do, but especially people that work that are undocumented and work in agriculture that feed us, right? They pick everything, the fruit. Yes.
I think forums like this really educate the people outside of your community. However, if more education and more information like what you gave us tonight were out there, then the committees you'd like to start or the groups you'd like to start to begin to transfer, like the art, whatever. In other words, it boils down to education.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I come from a sea of educators, and it is, and I think it's what I kind of figured out. What is your thing? And I go, I'm just an organizer. I think that's really what it comes down to. And yes.
What is the process of rebuilding with the Colegio 2.0?
What is the process? Good question. Money. No, I'm kidding. No, that's just too easy. So no, basically what we're doing right now, we're doing fund development to basically hire a consultant to develop a strategic plan. We can talk about it all we want, but we do have the the people that can populate the call, whether it's online or however the form it comes in, but we just need a plan and then just basically execute that plan. We have people now, enough people to do that, execute it. But again, if you're we need a roadmap, right? And my hope is that, the Sonny and Jose, they're in their 80s, my parents, 82, 81. But my hope is that we can land Colegio in a Western Oregon University or somewhere where it's an institute, or maybe it's the Colegio Cesar Chavez School of Education, but that they can witness that. That would just be my hope for them, that they could see that this actually is going to happen, whether it's a virtual or eventually a brick and mortar. But one thing I wanted to just leave you with before I let you go is that, I tapped into this movement because I believe that all of us have a gift, one gift, but some of us have a few more gifts, right? But a lot of us, those that know what that gift is, are really blessed, right? But there's some times that we go through life, but we don't know what that is. And so when I started PODER in that movement, I was able to tap into people's gifts, what they're good at. Not everybody's good here, right? They're behind the scene. There's some amazing people, right? And I just want to say is I hope that all of you know what that gift is or find that gift, and then you share it with the world. Because that's what happened with PODER, right? They were all volunteers. Nobody got paid a dime, a penny. It was just passion. But you know what? I feel like we did our part and changed the world, and I think what I just showed you is a testament to that. So thank you.